Hi Denison second graders, this is Miss Giasson from Mays Elementary, and I just want y'all to know that we are missing you guys like crazy. We hope that y'all are getting out and getting some sunshine today since the weather is a little different, and but we hope you're finding a little bit of time for learning. And today I am going to follow up Miss Martin's video about measurement. So she kind of went over this sheet where y'all talked about using things like a paper clip that is equal to about 1 inch, and using objects like, for instance, a laptop computer is about 1 foot wide, and there are 12 inches in that 1 foot. And then a scarf, if you took it off your neck and laid it out flat, would be about 1 yard long. And some of you have seen a yardstick before, so you can kind of imagine what that looks like. I am going to come back to this, but first I kind of want to back up and review some vocabulary words so that when you're hearing these words in these math lessons, you'll kind of understand what we're talking about. So first, let's talk about length. Length is when we can measure an object to find the distance from one end to the other end. So we're finding out how long it is. To do this, we can use things like paper clips, like Miss Martin showed you, that are about 1 inch, and we can line them up without any gaps in between to measure an object. Like if I wanted to measure this piece of paper, I could line them up at the end and put them side by side and figure out how many inches it is using paper clips. But also, something that's a really good tool is a ruler. And on a ruler, on this one, it is inches. It's showing you inches. But be careful, because when you get a ruler, there is a side that has inches, so that each inch is about the size of a paper clip, like we said. But on the other side of a ruler, there are smaller units of measure that are centimeters. So if you're using a ruler, make sure that you are finding the side that says inches on it if it's asking for inches, or your answer will be wrong. So an inch, like we said, is about the size of a paper clip, a thimble, or an eraser. Then we talked about a foot. 1 foot is 12 inches. So this ruler is 1 foot long because there are 12 inches on a ruler. So if you needed to know how many feet something were, you could use a ruler, and you know that each side is 1 foot long if you're looking at the inches side. You also heard the word yard. Yard would be if I put 3 of these rulers together, because 3 feet equal 1 yard. To kind of imagine what that looks like, you can think of the length of a guitar or a baseball bat. Those are both about 1 yard long. Now I am going to show you just a few measuring tips before we start measuring. Now that you know all the vocabulary words, and now that you're ready to measure, here are just a few things I want you to remember when you're measuring. And this is a different tool. This is measuring tape. So if your family builds things, you might see them using something like this. If it's something that they need that's longer than a yard, and they need a longer unit of measure, they might use one of these. So just make sure that you're using the correct side of the ruler or the tool. Like I said, on a ruler, there are 2 sides, the inches side and the centimeter side. On a tape measure, the same thing. There are 2 different types of measurements, and you need to be careful that you are using the correct one so that when you record your information, you're recording the right information. This one sometimes we forget about. Make sure when you are measuring an object that you line the edge of the object up with the end of the ruler, or on 0. For instance, on this one right here where the inches are, this would be where you would need to start. Right here is 1. This line is actually 0. So it's not the end of the ruler. And sometimes on your rulers, that happens too, that you'll see, let's see if you can see it right here, that it actually starts right here when you measure, not at the very end. So be careful. Sometimes even rulers will actually say start here. So look for that. But make sure if you're going to measure something, like if I was going to measure this pencil, I can't just put it anywhere on the ruler or I would not get the correct measurement. I have to make sure to line it up with the end of my object and the end of the ruler on 0 and go from there. And number 3, it says find where the object stops. Look at the nearest number to find the measurement. So for instance, if I'm going to measure this pencil, I'm going to make sure that I am on the inches side because I wasn't. I'm going to line it up on the 0. And I am going to look, and it is not right on 7 or right on 8. It's actually between the 7 and 8, so it's actually about 7.5 inches. So sometimes you're going to have to look at the lines in between the numbers to find the accurate measurement. Now I have a few little cards that I'm going to show you that already have a ruler to go along with it, but it's just kind of demonstrating how to make sure that when you're measuring an object that you have it lined up at the end, and then you look right at the end of that object and make sure that you're recording the number that it ends on. And remember, we are recording in inches. So if I was going to write this out, I would say that the length of the ribbon is 3 inches. Can't write very well. This one, the same thing. It's already lined up for you. You are just looking at the end of it, going straight down to the ruler, and then you'll know that this is 2 inches. Now, although these are all in inches, on your worksheet that you were doing with Miss Martin, it talked about other units of measure too. And you looked at, for instance, a quarter, and it wanted to know how long the object was. And right here, they measured from the top to the bottom, and it wants to know if you think that this is about 1 inch, 1 foot, and 1 yard. And before just selecting an answer in any of these problems, think about that paper clip. Think about that ruler that is 1 foot long. Think about that baseball bat. And then look at that object and think and predict what you think it is. Now a quarter, if I had a real quarter, it would be about 1 inch. Then Miss Martin went over these next 2 items with you as well. So I'm not going to go back over that. We are going to flip over to the back side of that paper where there's a few word problems. So remember to use your strategies, read the problem, have someone read it to you. The importance is figuring out the answer to the math problem, not knowing all the words necessarily. For instance, on number 4, it says, Chris measures the height of a hockey stick. So it's not the length, it's how tall it is. She says the hockey stick is about 4 units long. She says, units long. It's not telling you what units that she's using to measure the hockey stick. So she wants to know what unit did she use to measure it. So if she is going to measure this hockey stick, it has the option of, do you think she would use cubes, which we haven't even talked about, inches, feet, or yards? So I'm going to go ahead and mark out cubes because we are actually talking about real units of measure right now, and we haven't talked about cubes, so I'm going to just take that one out. Now, inches, I think about that paper clip, and I think if I had a real hockey stick in my hand, it would take me a long time to figure out how many inches that hockey stick was. So that probably isn't the best unit of measure. Now, feet. Maybe I'm going to use inches. a ruler that is 12 inches, which is 1 foot. This still might take me several rulers to measure the height of that hockey stick. So let me think about the yard, which I don't have a yardstick, but remember it's about 3 of these. So instead of lining 3 of these up, I could get a yardstick, and I think about that baseball bat. And I know that a hockey stick is about, is bigger than a baseball bat. It's longer than that. The height is taller than that. So I know that yards would be the best unit to use to measure this hockey stick. Now down below, I'm going to let you do this one on your own. Since this is in your packet, I'm also going to just give you some instructions. Right here, they're just wanting you to find 3 objects. It can be anything that you find in your house, but they are wanting to know, they're wanting you to find something that you could measure in inches, something that you would measure using that a whole ruler, a foot or more than one, so feet, or that you would use yards. So they just want you to pretend to draw that item and then measure it and figure out how many inches, how many feet, or how many yards it is. Now I'm going to go over one more little thing, and this is just a fun little activity that I wanted to show you, because if you wanted to print off any picture online, or maybe even something that you have in your coloring book, or something that you have in a book that you're reading at home, you could use that to practice measuring. So on this, there are parts of this robot that I could, and you could make this chart for yourself at home, where you could estimate, which is to just make a good prediction of what you think. And on this one, it says, how many inches do you think that the head of the robot is? So I'm thinking of those paper clips, and I'm just going to guess or estimate that it is 4 inches. Now I have the option that I could either use my paper clips and measure it side by side, and I would line it up with the end of my robot's head, and I would put my paper clips, and I noticed that it is about, make sure you don't have any gaps, about 2.5 inches. Or I could take my ruler, make sure that I am on the inches side, and I lined it up, and it is about 3 inches. So the thing about non-standard units like a paper clip is, yes, it is going to give you a good guess about how many inches, but sometimes it's not exact. If you have a ruler, that's always the best option to use because it's a standard unit of measurement. So my estimate was wrong, which is okay because I was just getting my brain ready for it. And I am going to go ahead and write that it's actually 3 inches. And like I said, on this chart, it is just going through the different parts of this robot, the body, the legs, the arms, the eyes. And I just printed this off because you could use any picture you have at all, something out of a magazine, a picture that you have colored at home, like I said, and that you can use whatever types of measurements you have to kind of practice and record. You could even take your picture and record it right on by the part you are measuring. So this is just like a fun little thing that you could add to it. Again, we miss you guys so much, and we are glad to get to share a little bit of learning time with you, and we want y'all to all stay very healthy and safe during this time. Thanks.